All right, welcome everyone to a new episode of the Roscoe's Wetsuit Neuro Podcast. I am your host, Toby Passman. On the show with me today, we have a special guest, Lee Adams. Lee has been actively researching, practicing, and teaching lucid dreaming for more than 20 years. He holds a bachelor's degree in psychology and is currently pursuing a Ph.D. at Pacifica Graduate Institute. He runs the podcast Cosmic Echo, as well as the dreamer community taileaters.com. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Yeah, glad to be here, man. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So talk to me about, the book that you wrote is all about lucid dreaming. Tell me what originally got you interested in wanting to pursue to write a whole book on this.
Yeah. Well, it's a long kind of story, but it started when I was a kid and just had these interesting kind of weird dreams that um, I didn't really hear about from other people. So I would have dreams where I was having lucid type of experiences and I didn't know what really was happening. And so I spent a good portion of my life trying to understand my own personal dream experiences and see if other people actually had these experiences as well. Um, and over time, I started realizing that I wasn't alone. That was a big thing. And lucid dreaming and the communities surrounded lucid dreaming have been around since, probably the beginning of human history. But the, the communities back before the internet were pretty spread out and hard to find, things like that. So luckily I was born during the time of the internet, so I could connect to other people that were on forums and stuff like that and kind of learn about these experiences myself. So just the struggle of being a young person and having these experiences and not being able to relate to anybody really drove me to kind of want to write something in a way that other people could relate to, that wasn't overly scientific but had science involved in it, and took a more maybe grounded approach than some of the books that I've read in the past, as well as explore techniques on how to actually have lucid dreams, and then also what to do after the fact that you start having these experiences. Most of the books that I've read on the subject of lucid dreaming try to get the person to have the experiences, but they don't really talk about like what happens after. So you're kind of just sitting there lost in your own like dreams, like these wild experiences that you now have. And you're like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do with this? And a lot of people online will be glad to give you advice on things you can do about why you're lucid and things like that. But my approach was more not really telling people what to do, but more giving them options that maybe they never really thought about, and applying lucid dream experiences to really improve their relationship to themselves, the relationship to the world around them while they're awake, and also you could call it like spiritual growth. So a good friend of mine, Ryan Hurd, he applied my book and said, this is a new mythology to the individual. So we had myths in the past, like the Romans and Greeks had myth, but we really don't have a myth today, a mythology. And I think dreams provide individual myth. So, and what I mean by that is kind of creating a integrated story about who you are, your place in the world, your place in these in the dreams, and what that really means to you and how to connect to it. So, I'm not the type of person that thinks that dreams are meaningless, random information. That personally doesn't make sense to me at all, even that approach. So I think they're the complete opposite. They're absolutely packed full of knowledge, even the most mundane dream. But I think that when you bring awareness into the dream experience, which is lucidity, like most people have hard time really defining what a lucid dream is, and that might be a good thing to explore right now. To me, a lucid dream is anything that applies awareness into the dream experience, and there could be varying degrees of awareness in a dream experience. But for me, any form of awareness into the dream experience is considered a lucid experience. You're aware that you're dreaming, right? And that could be like an out of body experience, an astral projection, on and on, whatever you really want to call it. As long as you have some form of awareness into it, you're lucid, right? So I think having and bringing lucidity to the dream experience really allows you to engage on a deeper level with the dream and the content of it. And the same thing could be said about waking reality. The more lucidity, the more awareness that you bring into the daily activities that you do, the more, not only the more that your dreams will actually amplify and become more engagement or engaging and more vivid and real, but also your daily life will become more, um, vivid and real and meaningful. So it's kind of like what you put into, you get out of it. So um, going back to your question, like I think the book kind of wrote itself in a way because these are my real personal inner experiences and struggles that I went through and how I approached it through mentorship from other people that were much more intelligent than I am, and taking that information and applying it to my own experience and seeing how something could be done to assist other people and not having to struggle so much through that process, but also grow through some type of work. So that kind of motivated me to write the book, I'd say, or at least put it into for my ideas and thoughts and stuff and blogs into a format that people could sit down, read. It's not volumes, it's not a scientific research article. It's a very personal, easy to understand, I think, um, simple thing that somebody can pick up and read, enjoy, and learn something. So even it's not out yet, but I have review copies all over the place. And my parents, who I never really even would think would read something like this, like my my stepdad, he picked it up and he was starting to read it. And I'm just, to me, I never really thought that would be something that would happen with this. Um, I don't really like I don't see it as an accomplishment or anything like that. I kind of just wrote it, and then it's like, oh, it's done, and not really excited about it, I guess, or anything like that. It's just kind of like something I did, and it kind of did it itself. And then I'm like, okay, I did that, whatever that was. And so it's really amazing to see people that are typically not really into dreams or anything like that pick up this book and be like, oh, what does this say? It's kind of cool. May open people up to things that they never really expected to to have happen to them. So it's always exciting.
So I got one of the review copies as we talked about, before we started, and um, so I have read most of it. And the beginning, you kind of start off with talking about like just consciousness overall, and then kind of breaking down the different states of consciousness, and then you kind of tie that in with how dreaming and specifically lucid dreaming uh, kind of fit into that whole puzzle. Why did you, or can you kind of break down those different states of consciousness and tell me kind of why that was important to have that kind of conversation before getting super deep into lucid dreaming?
Yeah, sure. Well, the um, a problem that anybody that's written a book will find is that it's hard to remember what you wrote, because it's been so long. So I wrote the book probably maybe 2 years ago. Um, so a lot of my thoughts and stuff have changed since then. And additionally, I need to go back and actually reread my book so that I can remember what I've wrote. Um, but when I set that up, I found it really important to try to give people an understanding of how complex it is, how complex consciousness really is. These are really, like, you could write books. I mean, people have written books on consciousness alone, and the book it's a chapter, I think, is it. That's not enough to really give people a firm understanding of what consciousness is. A lifetime of exploring that subject probably is not enough. So um, but I wanted to give people an understanding of how complex the subject is and what it really means when you have awareness in a dream. that it's not something just to um, treat as like a tool. It's not something to abuse. It's a very complex thing, and there's also varying degrees of it in a dream as well as waking. It's a very complex thing. So I wanted to show people like a glimmer of that complexity. Another important factor that I found is the why. Like I think chapter one is the why, and the reason I found it important to ask myself and other people, why do you want to have a lucid dream, is because that question by itself is also just as in depth as consciousness. And you could spend an entire lifetime, I think, really asking yourself why you want to do things. And in exploring why, you open up this bag, that can't really ever be closed. It's like, well, why do I do anything? Like, really, when you get down to it, what is the essence of why you're doing anything at all? So um I think in a way, like these questions that I ask at the beginning kind of take somebody's brain and break it up a little bit. It's like, let's free up the mind a little bit, make it a little bit more malleable. Let's see how crazy it can get, and then introduce these experiences that you can have, so you're not so rigid when you go in to have the experiences. You can actually kind of have an organic dream experience, versus like, well, I want to have a lucid dream where I'm flying, and like, okay, now you're flying, now what, So, yeah, I think, my goal really with those chapters and put in that way is to make people critically think about their choices in life, not just, in dreams. And I hopefully did, a decent job in that.
And you also kind of explained your take on kind of why what the impact or the significance of dreams, that they're not just something that just random things that happen while we're asleep and don't have any like real tangible value to us. And I really like the way that you wrote about that. Can you kind of talk to me about like what you see as, I mean, just kind of the overarching idea, like why do you think lucid dreams or just dreaming in general, why do you think it's such an important subject?
Yeah, it's a good question and hard to answer. But the first part is like, um, yeah, I have some pretty materialistic type friends in my life, and they're like, one of them is always asking me, well, what's the benefit of these experiences? Like, what's the benefit of having a lucid dream to the waking world? Because that's what most people really care about. And um, you know, in my personal dream experiences, I found that fear is a big part of a driving force in life. You fear death, or you feel fear being broke, or you fear of not having success, or your children having success, things like that. Fear is a really big driving force to the question of why we do things, right? And so in my dream experiences, fear has been a very big focal point in those experiences, often nightmarish type experiences, things like that. And so, in lucid experiences, I'm able to confront my fear in different ways than I normally can. Not, just a normal dream. It's vastly different because I have awareness of the dream experiences. But also in waking life, when I encounter fear in the dreams and I bring those same lessons into the waking reality, I approach fear in a much different way. I treat it um, as best I can with the level of awareness that I have at the time, as a learning experience versus like something as a negative. So I see the fear, I respond to it in a certain way, and then later on I reflect on why I responded the way that I did, and if there's a different way that I could in the future, or even why I consider that thing as a fearful experience. So I'm just learning more about myself. It's kind of like a reverberation, of like you have an experience and you're learning why you're doing that, you know. So dreams opened me up to seeing reality as in a different light than I normally would. And um, I've never really considered dreams being random events, because I would have, repeating dreams that would last for long periods of time on certain subjects, that I was working through in my waking life, as well as like deeply profound lessons that have impacted me, changed who I am completely just from one dream, and have been some of the most profound experiences of my entire life, and it's like, um I just don't understand how somebody could think that that would be random noise, like, it doesn't matter what they really think of it as, because those things have impacted me, greatly. So if it's random noise, then, well, I've used it in such a way that it's improved my life. So, um but anyways, I don't agree with that concept at all, and I don't think it makes sense. But so that's the real usefulness of lucid dreaming and waking reality. I think, in the sense that you could use it as a tool, quote unquote tool, to improve, your desires in life. Like what you seek, why you seek it, how to get those things, and on and on. But I think the profoundness of having dream experiences with as much awareness as you can is that, like I said before, it impacts your waking life, and also opens up this world of the dream, and how complex it is and how deep it can actually go, and and the relationship to how we dream and how it impacts waking life, psychologically, spiritually, and so on. So, I think it's a very important thing to explore for each of us. And our culture, I think, one of the biggest negatives of the material culture that we currently live in, and most of the world lives in, is that we deny the relationship that we have to dreams uh, and sleep. We try to push that away as much as we possibly can. But I was reflecting on the interesting idea that we have houses, and we have one room dedicated to sleep, and we spend very little other activities in that room besides sleeping, and um, maybe love making or whatever, but most of it's sleep associated. And that's kind of strange that we put so much emphasis on having a good night's rest, but then we deny it, when we're awake. We're like, oh, let's not talk about dreams, um, but I think that leads to a lot of things like, you know, uh, ostracizing the creativeness aspect of ourselves, and the connectivity to we have to these experiences, as well as like the ability to listen and learn from other aspects of ourselves that we completely deny. And like the unconscious, people discuss that in legal terms. Like there's this unconscious bias that they talk about, and that's pretty much the most interaction you get with this concept of the unconscious in like normal waking life for most of us. Most of us really have never uh, considered the idea that there's part of you that you just don't understand, like, um and try to build a relationship with that. So I think dreams are really profound in that sense, that they allow you to do that. They want to do that, and denying the dream experience, denying it of that ability, is really denying, half of who you are. Um, and there's scientific evidence of this too. So, um, yeah.
Do you have any good, like, say, anecdotal experiences, and these could be yours or people that you've heard from, any good like examples of, say, something, some kind of lesson or information that someone got out of a lucid dream and then kind of help them maybe apply it in some way to their waking life, and that doesn't necessarily have to be like materialistically, like they decided to go quit their job, but just more in terms of like, and I don't know, it could be anything, just anything like what has been like what have been your most valuable experiences that you think with lucid dreaming?
That's a really good question too. So I actually completely changed my profession in life, and it wasn't even a lucid dream. I just had a dream, and it was so profound and so just deep inside myself. And I didn't fully understand the symbology in the dream and what it was conveying to me. Um, but the emotional impact that it had on me was undeniable. And it deeply made it so that it was impossible for me to deny that I needed to change who I was, where I was going in life. Um, or essentially the lesson was that I would die. Like I'm killing myself continually doing the same thing that I was doing. So I was in the military for 14 years, and I was doing well. I was pretty high ranked, and I got hurt, and I had a choice to kind of stay in and continue to suffer with my injuries. And also, I wasn't happy, like the job situation is just not the most, um, it's pretty stressful, And so, but I had a dream, and it pretty much said that if you continue to do this, you will eventually die. So I was like, wow, I have to do this. I have to choose life over my death, and and stop the suffering, the unnecessary suffering. And that was a huge choice, because I'm letting up on a lot of money, and power and all that stuff. So, but I chose to do that, and the outcome, I'd say it was good, and it's also bad. Just like anything that you choose in life, it's there's lessons to be learned in all aspects of that. But that was probably one of the most impactful experiences I had, because it changed me. It changed me in such a way that most people were really surprised about things like that. But there's other things in dreams that have really impact me or were impactful. One was the concept of like being split into multiple different pieces of yourself and trying to reunite those things together. Um, and so one dream I had, I was in my home. It's actually in the book. I was in my home, and um, I became lucid in a dream, and I walked out in the hallway of my uh, house I was renting, and I walked down the hallway a little bit, and I turned around, and there's a zombie coming at me. And so a Buddhist teacher of mine at the time had told me, "Hey, why don't you like try to, instead of attacking these things in your lucid dream experiences?" Because I was generally very aggressive towards like these other characters, because they're usually like terrifying. And so he's like, "Well, instead of attacking them and thinking you're like all powerful and stuff, why don't you just sit down and have a conversation with them?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll try that." And so this zombie, it's coming at me, and it obviously wants to kill me or eat my brains. And because those are the types of zombies that I was scared of as a kid, as the brain eating version. And so it comes up to me, and I just bowed my head down to it, to allow it to eat my brains. I was like, just do what you got to do, man. And so I bent my head down, and I hear like a crunch, and it was silent, like quiet. And I was like, and so I looked up, and the zombie's just hanging out, just not doing anything. And I'm like, hey, let's sit down, let's have a conversation. And so it sat down with me, and it was like, I'm like, what's going on? What's wrong? And it said, I'm unsatisfied. And I was like, what are you unsatisfied of? And it said, I'm unsatisfied. That's all it said. And I was like, okay. And then I look down the hallway, and I see another zombie walking towards me. And I got up, and I was like, hey, sit down, sit down with us. And so he sat down, and as it sat down, I look at it, and it's, these aren't zombies anymore. They're copies of myself. And um and what, like, though I didn't do anything, they looked at each other, and they like took wires out from their stomach, and they like switched them around into each other, and then they merged into each other and then merged into me. And I woke up, and like immediately after that, and I was like, what was that all about, but I had this profound like feeling of reconnecting to this aspect of myself I didn't really understand. And also like the lesson of being unsatisfied, like what is a zombie? A zombie is something that can never be satisfied of its hunger, for flesh and or things. It's always trying to get something, put it inside of itself to satisfy that unquenching thirst for stuff, and zombies are a very powerful image in our society. We have zombie movies all over the place, and it's like, what are those really representing? It's like the that desire that we have that we can never get, and how society can turn into that and completely overrun everything. But in my reflecting on it, I was like, oh, it is my self trying to express itself, saying that you have an aspect of yourself that you can never really satisfy, and you have to be okay with that, and recognizing the zombie as myself too. So um, very rarely have I had lucid dreams, or even, I mean, I do have dreams where I have characters and they tell me things about myself or the world around me and lessons and stuff like that, but it's pretty rare. Most of my dream experiences have been image based, where something will happen like that, and I have to kind of sit there and think about it a little bit, and what the story that um, the the dream is trying to tell me, even in a lucid dream. So those are my most profound. Most people that talk about lucid dreams are talking about like flying around and having like um, essentially sex with like dream characters and stuff like that, and that's all, fun in games too, that's all possibility in lucid dreams. But I think there's a much deeper meaning and story behind these experiences that you can have. Those are very surface level, and it goes back to like the desires and stuff like that you're trying to achieve through having these experiences. Like if you're continually looking for sex in your dreams and stuff like that, you will find it, but you will never be satisfied. You'll be a zombie. And my hoping for myself is to get past that, to see those things of what they are, and try to expand myself to be more conscious and aware of my actions, even in a lucid experience.
So you also wrote about like some of the different substances, I guess, that can be consumed that alter dreaming, either for positive or negative. Can you talk to me about like someone say who maybe has never experienced a lucid dream and is trying to have one of these experiences that we've been talking about? What sort of things, what sort of steps, maybe it doesn't have to be in terms of substances or different supplements, but I guess it could be.
Yeah. Well, the book is in order for a very important reason, and the substances and stuff are more towards the end, because my hope is that you won't really need to use anything. Most of the things that I've used to get me to have lucid dream consistently are um, just things you already have inside yourself, essentially self-reflection, and certain sleep behaviors. And I primarily use like the most efficient ways possible, because they're supported by research. So um, one is the mild technique, which is mnemonic induced lucid dreaming. Essentially, a person named Stephen LeBerg made the technique to do research on lucid dreaming, and he was successful in training other people, and he showed the effectiveness of it through research articles, peer reviewed. And essentially that one is where you wake up, you wake up from having a dream experience in the middle of the night. And because generally we have around 5 dreams a night on average, and we really don't remember them. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and you remember that you had a dream, that's a very good first step. And then so you'd wake up wake up from having a dream, you recall the dream, and if you weren't lucid in that dream, then you would imagine yourself as if you were lucid. So you're imagining, say, I always use like this bike uh, dream experience that I've never really actually had, but say I was riding a bike and just, random people were there and nothing really important seemed to be happening. I obviously wasn't lucid. And then I woke up and that was the dream. So I would imagine myself on the bike and maybe um, getting off the bike and looking around and being like, holy crap, like this is a dream, and all these people are just, they're either figments of my imagination or, something else. So I'd be like, wow, maybe I can interact with these people. And so I'd imagine myself interacting with one of the dream characters, right? And so I'm not asleep or anything. I'm just imagining this happening. So then, with that in mind, I go to sleep with the intention that the next dream I have is going to be a lucid dream, right? And I keep also the idea of the last dream being lucid and this imaginative idea of me doing these things in a lucid dream all in my mind as I go back to sleep. So you're essentially going back to sleep with this intention, the imagination of your past one, and then um, you go to sleep. And it's very effective. They have peer-reviewed articles talking about it. My website talks about it, and so it's one of the most effective ways. And to have consistent lucid dreams too. The other one that I use is wake back to bed. And essentially, you wake up after sleeping a period of time, like 4 to 5 hours. You're still tired, right? Because you didn't get a, well, most people don't sleep just 4 or 5 hours, but I don't. So I wake up 4 to 5 hours later and I do an activity or something for about an hour. Some people don't need an hour, but I like to really wake myself up as much as I can. And then I go back to bed. I actually lay back down. I have the intention to go back to sleep, and I just go back to sleep with the intention of having a lucid dream next. And that one's very effective as well. The I've tried countless different techniques for myself that don't have peer-reviewed information of it, and there's plenty in my book about different techniques that you can do and on my website. And some of those may be more effective for you, but I've run the gamut of going through all these different techniques, and those ones really are the most effective for me. Um, One of them was the wake back to bed was so effective that almost every, like, I was in the military, so I'd wake up about 5 o'clock in the morning, go work out with the military group, and then I come home, shower, and take a nap for an hour, and before the start of my day. And that was so effective that I was like, I could guarantee myself that I was going to go have this lucid dream, and I could plan on it, and set up like um, maybe an experiment or something like that that I would do in the next lucid dream. So those are really effective. And then supplements and like substances that you're mentioning, those kind of come after, all this stuff. So I like to use the acronym KISS, keep it simple, stupid, when it comes to anything, and especially lucid dreams, because the more complicated you make this, the more um, complicated it's going to be, and sometimes the simplest process is the best. But there's hundreds and hundreds of supplements out there that can do different things to your body and brain while you're sleeping or while you're awake. And so I go through a list of those. um, but the really the most effective one is, by all standards, peer reviewed information, is galantamine. And in the UK it's a prescription drug. In the US it's not. And it's a very powerful substance. People call it a supplement. I think it's much more than a supplement. I would even consider it a psychedelic because it's so profound. But they um, it's so profoundly powerful in changing consciousness, and especially in a dream state. But it's a supplement that, or depending on where you live, it's a supplement or a prescription that people are used for Alzheimer's disease because it supports the increase of acetylcholine in the brain, and that affects memory and cognition. A lot of things that are associated with lucid dreaming are about memorying your dreams. So, like having a dream journal and stuff like that is also profoundly important for memory recall of your dream experiences, as well as like having awareness during the day, activities that can do that, like reality checks. They bring awareness to the day. Like you're constantly going around saying, "Am I dreaming? Am I awake?" Or doing certain activities that determine if you're asleep or awake. Well, those are all bringing awareness. This concept of your own personal consciousness, conscious awareness to your daily experience, and that's going to pass on into the dream experience too. So I think the majority of techniques are associated with awareness, and also trying to slip in conscious awareness through the day into the dream experiences to make you aware. So
Have you noticed? Because it just came to mind when you were talking about that supplement, which I'm sure I'm going to butcher
glutamine,
the.
yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, yeah, but you're talking about, so it works on acetylcholine, correct? You were saying.
Yeah,
So I was just curious. Have you noticed any change? Like, has your diet made any impact on dreaming? Because I was just thinking, like, consuming like choline rich foods like
right,
egg yolks or something
right,
like,
yeah, yeah.
or maybe that's not enough of a
Like,
boost to really change
no,
anything. I don't know.
absolutely. Well, the reason they blame tryptophan, I think it is, for like Thanksgiving because of turkey and stuff, is because it makes you sleepy. And I think it's been a while since I've really looked at the chemical structure and the makeup of everything, but it's on my website too. But I that's why I have my website, so I can go back and be like, oh, I didn't know I knew this stuff, like. But tryptophan is a precursor to acetylcholine, so eventually you get acetylcholine from tryptophan and like egg yolks and stuff like that have tryptophan in it. But glutamine is a really complex drug because I really tried to understand what was the active mechanism in it because it didn't seem to, I've tried like acetylcholine supplements and stuff like that, and they say for the most part that they don't cross the blood-brain barrier for people, but I've realized that that's really complex too, because the blood-brain barrier for everyone's not the same, and that's really not a barrier. It's more like your liver protecting your brain. So, and not everybody's liver's up to snuff. So you can have not only like things that are supposed to cross the blood-brain barrier actually cross the blood-brain barrier, as well as like bacteria and stuff like that can actually get through the blood-brain barrier. So it's not like this protective shield that doesn't, it's not permeable. It's more kind of independent on each individual. And anyways, so but glutamine is a really complex one because not only does it affect the acetylcholine neurotransmitters, but it also affects GABA, and GABA affects like multiple other things, which leads to um, things called like nicotonic receptors. And nicotonic receptors are more associated with like having out of body experiences than other like acetylcholine is. Um, so it's just really complex. And there's like hyperzine A, which is another supposedly effective lucid dream supplement that the UK uses because they can't sell glutamine over the counter. You have to be prescribed it. So they use hyperzine A, and that's, I think it's not as effective because it doesn't affect your brain the same way through the GABA system. So, anyways, that's kind of getting the weeds of it, but it's a very, very super effective supplement. Foods absolutely do the same thing. So, just not at the same levels that this external plant would, this specific one. But, caffeine affects your sleep, obviously. For a lot of people, it keeps you up, and um, affects your like adrenal glands and stuff like that. And so, if you reduce your caffeine, it's going to affect your sleep. A new one that's pretty common nowadays is like cannabis that a lot of people use, and that absolutely is going to affect your ability to recall dreams. People say that it affects your ability to have REM, and I disagree with that 100% because um, if you don't experience REM, you essentially go insane. So I don't see a lot of cannabis users completely losing their mind and hallucinating during the day. So at least I don't think so. um, they're definitely not running around like somebody that's an opiate addict or anything like that. So seeing whoever they're talking to. So cannabis users, they have a really horrible short-term or long-term memory when they're using cannabis, and the same thing goes with dreams. It's like the ability to process those short-term memory experiences, and a long-term memory experience are really quick. I use cannabis sometimes, and whenever I'm using that, I have a really hard time recalling my dreams. But the interesting thing is I wake up and I know that I dreamed, and I recall the dream when I wake up, but it's so quickly deleted. It's just like erased immediately, and it's like, whoa, like it just evaporates. So if I don't write it down super quick, it's gone. And um it's kind of the same thing, like if you're watching a movie or something like that in cannabis, it's like good luck remembering what you're watching. But if you watched it again, you'd be like, oh, maybe I can recall this. But um anyways, so there, um I could go into each one and it'd take the entire podcast up. But um supplement, like we are made up of those compounds. Like the reason that supplements work is because our brains respond to those. They respond to plants. We have used plants through our evolution to be who we are today, and so we have a relationship with these things. And they're not just like something to be taken and not really thought about what you're putting in your body, because it affects your consciousness, every aspect of it. A lot of us eat sugar and things like that. I eat sugar. And if anybody takes a break from sugar, they can start to see pretty quickly not only the withdrawal effects of sugar and how that affects your consciousness and your emotions. It'll affect your dreams, and it'll also affect like how you see the world around you, especially after a while of being kind of clean of it. You're like, wow, like things are so much more vivid and real than they were before. And dream experiences can be the same. So um, so they all kind of affect each other. And yeah, so the book kind of goes in a little bit of that so people can kind of get an idea.
Anything else related to just the whole subject of dreaming, lucid dreaming, consciousness? Anything that we haven't touched on yet that you think would be valuable for the listeners before we wrap up?
um well, I think the biggest thing that I would hope that people would really consider is that dreams are incredibly profound, each one of them. And you could pick up the most mundane dream that you've ever had. And if you really sat there and you went into it deeply, you would find an entire world in there. So, um, most people, they dream and they're like, that was weird, or I just had some BS dream that doesn't even make any sense. Um, but if they really engaged with it on a deep level, with awareness of some kind, they would find things in there that they didn't expect. Um, and in since I've wrote my book, um, I've really come to know the importance of symbols and what a symbol is, or at least I'm trying to understand what a symbol is. And dreams are filled with symbols, right? They People could say that dreams are symbols, right? And if you really engage with symbols and you go down the rabbit hole of what a symbol is, it'll open you up into an entirely different view of reality that we just don't see today. And um, and both aspects of like the material and then the symbolic, you could say, or metaphoric or whatever, are equally important, and that you need both of them to be complete. And our culture and many others have pretty much removed the relationship that we have to symbols. We use imagination as fake, right? We're like, oh, it's a fake thing, right? But anything that we do in our waking lives, anything that we create, any type of activity that we do, we first imagine it and then we act it out. It's not the other way around. It's not we act it out and then we imagine it. So, you know, I encourage people to go into their dreams, into their imagination, and really try to engage with it and try to understand it. And through that, they'll learn more about themselves, their place in reality, and um, and learn more about their desires, their true desires in life. And it allows you to connect yourself. So I encourage people to do that. Hopefully, my book will entice people to look at dreams differently, as well as the symbols and their place in this world. So yeah.
Great, great. Well, Lee, if people want to find out more about or connect with you or find your book, where would you direct them to?
So they can actually go to luciddreambook.com, or they can also go to Tail Eaters, like you're eating a tail, eaters.com, taileaters.com. And they can buy my book there. It's on pre-order right now. It'll be out May 4th. And so that's the best way. There's also discussion groups there, so they can go if they have Facebook. There's a discussion group on Facebook. If they don't like Facebook, there's a discussion group on Discord. If they don't like Discord, there's a discussion group on a forum. And all those ways you can contact me and have a conversation with me if you choose. I'm more than happy to talk to people daily about dreams if they have a question, if they need help or anything like that. I don't charge anything for it. I just enjoy listening to people about their dream experiences. I really feel for people that suffer and have dream experiences that challenge them, and I really would like to spend time in helping those people if I can, um, and just share with other people in a community about dream experiences. So those are just some ways that they can do that. They can email me through the website, um, and or they can get in touch with my publisher and they'll contact me. I'm pretty open for people to hit me up if they want.
Great, great. Well, Lee, thank you so much for coming on the show today. If the listeners enjoyed the show, go ahead and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're Roscoe's Wetsuit. You can also find audio versions of the podcast available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and just about anywhere else that audio podcasts are available. Lee, again, I wanted to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, man.